Hi everyone, week 5, leadership and trust, one of the more important and probably for many more of one of the most interesting aspects of management. Pretty darn important. We've all had good leaders, all had bad leaders, and hopefully today we can show you a little bit about why that might come about. Okay, so today we'll have a look at the leader behaviour model, managerial grid, and then one of the key theories of leadership in the contingency area is path goal theory. You'll also recognise that this is a part also of your pebble pad assessment, which looks at a questionnaire for path goal theory. Hopefully you find that useful. Okay, into it. So first off, let's have a think about some leaders. You might have had good leaders, you might have had bad leaders, but one of the key aspects of leadership is the ability of the leader to develop a trusting relationship with the followers. Followers can be anyone, but in this case, we'll generally take it towards to being employees. So think about leader A. Leader A, a highly developed skills in leadership, been doing it a long time, but for some reason may not be trusted by his or her employees. This would certainly be a limitation, despite the fact that they might have the technical skills or even the academic knowledge of leadership. The development of trust is going to help leader A take all of those skills and knowledge to the next level and really develop the teamwork, the ability of the people or the followers to achieve on their goals. Leader B, on the other hand, for example, may have considerable amounts of trust and still be learning. I don't want to say the theories of leadership, but how leadership works in practice. But because leader B has that trust, he or she can leverage that trust while they are developing that technical knowledge and experience in leadership, and still get the same, if not better, results from their staff, from the followers. Put slightly a different way, leader A might be technically proficient, but without that personal, without that relationship, it's not going to work well for that leader. It'll reach a peak, it'll reach a pinnacle, and it's unlikely that after it reaches that pinnacle it could go any further. Leader B, on the other hand, because they've got that basis of trust, that they've got that strong relationship with the followers, the fact that they don't have that technical knowledge is somewhat inconsequential. They'll use and leverage that trust, that relationship, to get people to do things that essentially that leader A may not be able to do, except through coercion or force or threats or something to that effect. That trust is a critical component in leadership and therefore in management. So that's just meant to give you a bit of a setting to where we'll go for the next couple of slides. So one of the key ways of looking at how leadership operates in practice is to look at what behaviours leaders exhibit. What do they do to generate success or outcomes with their followers? This is one of the most common ways of the ways we think about leadership, and it ranges from the leader being focused on getting the task done somewhat autocratically, or focusing on relationships, letting people sort of do what they want. Anyway, so into it. Leader-centered views, looking at what the leader does, is looking at it in terms largely of an autocratic approach to leadership. Now, the word autocratic tends to mean dictatorial, directional, depending on your readings. All sort of indicate a very command and control type approach. Dictatorial is probably the word I'd use most often to explain this. It's not always a bad thing. Some organisations require this approach to be effective. The police force, the military, highly regulated industries, where deviation from what's expected or what needs to be controlled would be significantly poor or bad for the organisation. So autocratic, left-hand side, leader-centered, focusing on the leader themselves and making sure that what they say is carried out, forgive me, to the letter by the people that are doing the job. On the other extreme, we have employee-centered, and this is usually referred to as a laissez-faire style of leadership. So while autocratic is very directional, dictatorial, highly controlling, employee-centered or a laissez-faire approach to leadership essentially lets the employees do as they want. If I was a manager and leader, I would be saying, in an autocratic sense, do as I tell you. Don't do anything different. Do this. In a laissez-faire approach, I would be saying, look, it's up to you. Go for your life. Take it easy. Let me know when you're finished. Very little control, very little command, in fact, or direction. It's up to the employee. Now, again, this is not saying that it's good or bad. It's just different ways of looking at it. In some organisations, a laissez-faire approach might be quite useful. Academic, for example, we're professionals. We are allowed to have our professional capacities and get that done. And there's still elements of control, of course, but we're very much left to our own devices to get the job done. An artist, for example, would be in a similar situation. Having an autocratic leader of a creative type organisation probably would be a significant mismatch. In the middle, what we most see in organisations today is a participative approach. So, as I said, the autocratic leader would be saying, do this is what I want you to do, don't change, don't deviate. Laissez-faire leader, this is up to you, you let me know when you're finished. Participative leader, we'll be doing this together. I'll give you a little bit of direction, you'll give me some feedback, and we'll essentially work together to achieve our goals, whatever they may be. That's a behavioural approach to leadership. There's quite a few others. So the next model we look at is called the managerial grid. It has, similar to the first one, the behaviours of managers, it looks at a combination of whether the task is important or whether there's a concern for people. So the left hand or the vertical axis looks at whether the manager or the leader has a concern for people, that is relationships. Do they develop the relationship? And you'll recall from the first slide that trust is very important. So a concern for a relationship and developing that trust has a massive impact on the success of an organisation and whether people or the followers can achieve their objectives. On the horizontal axis, we have a concern for the task. How important is the focus, or how strong is the focus for the task to be completed? Sometimes one will override the other, depending on a range of circumstances, variables, including personality, the environment, the organisational culture. All of that will certainly have an impact on whether a manager focuses on the people or whether they focus on the task. Having said that, we can make some judgments or some categories of leadership styles based on these sort of rankings. So if a manager has low concern for the task and low concern for the people, it's known as an impoverished leadership style. Quite useless in the great scheme of things. To be honest, if this was me and I was an impoverished leader, I'd probably start to consider whether I should be a manager at all and wonder about other opportunities. You may have even come across this leader in your experiences. They don't really care about the job getting done, and they don't care about you. It might be a case of not quite do as you want, but do as I tell you and still not get the job done. Next one, task manager, clearly a high focus on the task, always making sure the task is done, often to the detriment of the relationship with others. So this might be the type of person that yells at you to hurry up. This might be the type of person that is rude to you personally, with the belief that by being less relationship focused, the task will get done more productively, more efficiently, etc., etc. not good either. It might be great to get the task done on time, and all the rest of it, but the consequences are ruining that trust, which I said earlier was quite important. Again, we don't want this too much either. The next one then is one that focuses high on people. If you can think about the terminology country club, it sort of sounds like it's very relaxed, it's very laid back, it's laissez-faire would be a way to describe the leadership style that might work inside a country club. An example here might be the leader has such a great concern for people and such a low concern for the task, they might allow people to leave early without completing their job and still get paid for it. They might just sort of sit back and let people do what those people want to do with very little control or concern for the success of the organisation or for the completion of a particular task. Again, not good. It's great for people, but to get the job done, you're a manager, you need to make sure that you have a combination of both. And this is probably where we start to get somewhere a bit more useful. The middle of the road, straightforward, concern for people as well as concern for the task. Not great on either side, but at least there's a bit of both in the middle of the road. The one we really want is the team manager, where there's a high level of concern for people and a high level of concern for the task. We want to take the task manager and move them from a high focus on the task and a low focus on people to having a high task focus as well as a high focus for people. Same with the country club manager. We want to move them from having no focus on the task or low focus on the task to having a combination of high focus for the people and a high concern for the task. This is why it's called a team manager, because according to the literature, this is where the manager or the leader truly or genuinely starts to develop skills in leading a team effectively. Okay, the next model. One of the more common contingency theories and quite well used in the literature today and by organisations is something known as path goal theory. It essentially says that a manager's behaviour, similar to those that you saw in the first slide, autocratic, participative and laissez-faire, have an impact on the goal, the performance, the productivity and the satisfaction of employees. So that's what we'll talk about now. A directive approach to management, we know what that was. That was the autocratic style. It might be highly controlling, highly clear in what's expected of the employee, not allowing too much discretion from the employee or the follower. The next one, supportive. In this path or this approach to leadership, the manager or the leader is a little less directive and recognises that the employee or the follower has got some basic skills and knowledge and provides support for them. A bit like a coach, still in charge, but recognising that the skills and the qualities of the employee are still strong and that they just need to, well, forgive me, coach or mentor them to bring those capacities or the achievement of the tasks out. The next one, participative. So we've mentioned that in the first slide or second slide again. So the participative approach, again, different to directive and supportive. While the leader is still the leader, there's an expectation that the people or followers will participate in the decision making. This is slightly different to directive and supportive. Here in participative, we're suggesting that it's more than a coaching role. It would be, good example, a sports team. Directive, I'm the coach, do as you're told. Supportive, I'm the coach, how can I help you? Participative, I'm the coach, how can we solve this problem together? And then finally, achievement oriented. We recognise that the tasks have to be completed to be successful in the organisation. We've got to achieve our goals, we've got to achieve our objectives. And this one's focusing on a bit more like competition. And again, I might use the coaching or the sports team analogy to explain this, and say this would be the coach saying, hey, look, get out there, we can kick some butt, we're going to win. Challenging people to do their best even. As you can see, each is different, and that means we need to be able to use those different approaches depending on the circumstances or the contingencies that we face as a leader. On the other hand, we have to have some sort of goal. We have to have an outcome for these paths to be successful. So depending on the circumstances or the contingencies, which we'll get into in a minute, we might have a range of different goals or outcomes. Performance for the individual hopefully relates to the performance of the organisation. Someone doing their job well means the organisation performs well. Productivity, a focus on efficiency and effectiveness and making sure that completing the task or the job within a reasonable amount of time with the minimum use of resources, including time. And finally, their satisfaction. Think about that relationship that I mentioned in the previous slide, and how if we are satisfied at work, we will likely do more. We will likely want to do more past what's expected of us. So think job satisfaction and the returns or the commitment that helps employees gain as they go through their jobs. So the whole point of this is contingency. Well, what is the contingency here? At the moment, you've just got path goal. Do these 4 things, or one of those 4 things as required, and you'll get that. If it was only that easy, everyone would be a great leader. But we've got other issues to deal with. So first off, we've got environmental contingency factors. There's a couple of examples. So what sort of task are we getting people to do? Is it a simple task, like making a sandwich or driving a bus or something like that? In which case I might be quite directive and I'll still achieve performance, productivity and satisfaction. Is the task complex or highly creative, where I might need a supportive or a participative type leader to meet the needs of the group to get those outcomes, the performance, productivity and satisfaction. Second one up there, up the top, formal authority system. So what sort of authority is the organisation focused on? Is it really highly militaristic? Is it you report to such and such, who reports to so on, who reports to the next person? Is it highly structured, or is it more informal? Do managers chat with staff on an even keel? Do the people who work higher than you have a chat with you, and is there a culture of informality and friendliness? And the work group. Is the work group well structured? Is it functioning? Do the people I work with, now I don't mean my leaders or my subordinates, I mean the people at my level, are they good to work with? Do they help me? Do I help them? Is this supportive in getting the job done? Next, you have the employee contingency factors. Locus of control. This is a good one to know. It'll come in handy for you for the rest of your degree, and you might be able to reflect on it fairly easily with a few little stories I'm about to give you. Oh, pardon me. I'll get to that in a second. Experience, like I mentioned before, when we're looking at a directive leader, the leader might need to be directive because the experience of the employee isn't too great. Same with the perceived ability. Has the employee, or does the employee believe that they've got the skills required to deliver the performance, productivity, etc. in the organisation? If the experience is limited, or the perceived ability is limited, you may use the directive and supportive approaches or paths to achieve those outcomes or goals. Like I said, if the person's a new employee, it's likely that they've got limited experience in that particular organisation, and as a result, being a bit more directive can be assisting the employee to guide them down the right path of what to do and what not to do. Quite acceptable. On the other, or similarly, perceived ability, the ability of the employee, they may say, oh look, they may be a little bit inconfident or not sure of themselves in what they need to do. So being supportive can provide that support, that confidence, that knowledge that they're on the right track, that they're doing the right things to achieve the goals that they're being set. Okay, so back to locus of control. Again, this is a really useful term, and you'll see this all of the time for yourselves. The easiest way to explain it is to give you an example from the real world. Imagine a person goes for a job interview, and they say that, and they show up for the job interview wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and they don't really make a big effort for the job interview. They don't get the job. They walk away and they say, oh, that employer didn't like me very much. There was nothing else I could have done to help me get that job. That would suggest an external locus of control, meaning that it's the life, that the situation was outside of the individual's control, even though they wore shorts and a t-shirt to the job interview, which you probably realise isn't going to be helpful. On the other hand, an internal locus of control would suggest that the person takes responsibility for their ability to influence their own lives. So, there's someone with an internal locus of control that wore a pair of shorts and a t-shirt to the interview would say, oh look, I probably should have dressed up a little bit more and made more of an effort, and that's probably why I didn't get that job. I can give you a similar example to just be sure that you get it in terms of university study and your assessment. A person with an internal locus of control might say that, oh look, if I work really hard at this piece of assessment, I'll get a good mark and I'll pass. A person with an external locus of control might say that the lecturer is really mean, that the assessment task was too hard, and that they even if they had tried 110%, they were still never going to pass because of those factors. So there's certainly an external approach. I don't quite want to say blaming, but that's sort of what it is. Blaming things outside the perceived control of the individual. Whereas an internal locus would suggest that individual takes responsibility and works towards minimizing the problems or the factors that impact on their success. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is about it for the day. So next week, let me just check. Next week we have foundations of decision making, and after that we've got foundations of planning, but that I'll tell you next week. Have a great day. Thanks for staying tuned for 23 minutes. Best wishes and see you soon.